Common 401k rollover mistakes. Hey everyone, Adam Bergman here, tax attorney, founder of IRA Financial. Welcome to another episode of AdBits. Got a really good episode for you today. 401k rollovers, about a $500 billion industry each year. So lots of people have access to the 401k plan, and either when they leave their job or they retire or they reach a certain age, they then have access to those funds and they tend to roll them to an IRA. So on today's podcast, I want to talk about some of the most common mistakes and some of the things you need to think about before doing a 401k rollover. Well, let's just start right at the top. Believe it or not, there are rules when it comes to whether you have access to your 401k funds. In an IRA, there's no limitations. You can do a distribution out of an IRA anytime you want. You may pay tax and a 10% penalty if you're under 59.5, or maybe no tax if it's a Roth IRA and it's been open 5 years or 59.5, or maybe it's a Roth IRA and you're pulling out the contributions tax-free. But when it comes to a 401k, you actually can't control the account. You can't just pull the money out anytime you want. I know it sounds crazy, but the rules were designed in order to limit that. They didn't want people just pulling money out of their 401k. They allowed it in an IRA, but not a 401k. Makes sense? Probably not. But that's how the rules were designed. And 401ks are taxed under 401 and IRAs are taxed under 408. So there's different rules for IRAs and 401ks. So when it comes to a 401k rollover, you essentially need to satisfy a plan triggering event to get the money out. And I've talked about this many, many times in blogs, podcasts, videos. But just to recap, a plan triggering event means you leave your job, the plan gets terminated by a merger, acquisition. Thirdly, you reach the age of 59.5. Those are the three most common ways to get access to your 401k plan funds. You can do a rollover or a distribution. Okay, so again, triggering event, you need to be 59.5. You got to leave your job or the plan terminates. Okay, so if you're 42, 52, you still work at the company that you have your 401k work with, you can't take the money out, even if you want to. Yeah, I know. Doesn't make sense. I know you can do it with an IRA. I know I get these questions all the time. Adam, what the heck? This makes no sense, but it's the way the rules are. So what do you do if you're under 59.5 and don't satisfy a triggering event? You can do a loan. If your 401k has a loan feature, will allow you to borrow $50,000 or 50% of your account value, whatever's less. Use that for any purpose. That will give you those funds to use tax-free, penalty-free. You can try to satisfy a hardship distribution if you have significant financial needs or medical bills or other types of hardships. Not easy to satisfy, so that's not ideal. With a hardship distribution, you still have to pay tax on what you pull out, just not a 10% early distribution penalty, but you would get access to those funds. And those are probably the two most common ways to get access to those funds. There's something called substantial equal periodic payments, where you have to take out a certain amount each year over a period of years or until you reach 59.5 or 5 years. But you're limited on how much you can take out. But if you just want to do a rollover, maybe you get more investment access, better investment choices, because 401ks essentially limit you to just mutual funds, ETFs, or some stocks, and you want to do maybe real estate or alternative assets or private equity, venture capital, or invest in your buddy's business. Not going to be able to do it in a 401k generally, unless it's a solo 401k and you're self-employed. If you have a regular 401k at work, you're just going to be relegated to doing the investments they offer. So a lot of people want to do rollovers because IRAs, you have more investment options. But unfortunately, if you're under 59.5 and you are staying at the job that has the 401k, other than a hardship or the loan, you really don't have many options. So now let's say you do satisfy a triggering event and you're going to do a rollover. What do you need to consider? Well, you have options. You can roll the funds to any other retirement account, most common in IRA, because you have better investment options and more distribution flexibility. Or let's say you're going from Apple to Google. you can always roll over those funds to the new 401k plan. Most 401k plan funds will accept rollovers, and direct rollovers are tax-free, and they can be done as many times as you want. So the Google to Apple or the Google to an IRA in John Doe's name are all tax-free. Those are direct. So you can do that as long as you have a trigger event, you're 59 and a half, you leave your job, plan terminates, you can do a direct rollover to another retirement account, IRA, or you can move it to the new employer's 401k. Now, pre-tax 401ks need to go to a pre-tax IRA. Roth 401k needs to go to a Roth IRA. If you want to roll over pre-tax 401ks to a Roth IRA, generally the way to do it is you do a rollover from the pre-tax 401k to the pre-tax IRA, and then you can just convert it to Roth. Not a big deal. But when you convert it, you pay tax on the amount you convert, whether it's cash or the value of the asset. Now, what about an indirect rollover? What happens if you want to take the money and use it for 60 days, which we know you can do an indirect rollover once every 12 months. The issue with doing an indirect rollover in a 401k is there's a 20% withholding tax. So the company is supposed to withhold 20%. So if it's 100 grand, 20,000, and essentially you have to make up that difference if you want that 20,000 bucks or 20% to be back in your retirement account. If not, unfortunately, it's out of your retirement account. So it becomes an issue. With an IRA, there's no withholding on indirect rollovers. Again, you can do indirect rollovers once every 12 months in the IRA or the 401k, but with an IRA, there's no 20% withholding on an indirect rollover. So you'd have 60 days in an IRA to just do what you wish with the money and then move it back to the IRA. But if you do a 401k indirect, the employer is supposed to withhold 20%, and then you can make it up by putting back that 20% and filing for a refund with the IRS. If you don't put in that 20%, then technically that 20% is going to be treated as withholding tax that will cover taxes that you owe. Again, if you don't owe 20% tax, you can try to get a refund, but that money is not going to be in your IRA any longer or your 401k. So you want to be cautious about it. That's an issue and a mistake a lot of people make is they're like, oh, I'll take some cash. I'll use it for like 60 days and then push it back. And they don't realize there's a 20% withholding. And now they don't have the free cash to put it back and they lose 20% of their retirement account. So if you're doing a rollover, you leave your job, you're over 59 and a half, roll it to an IRA and then do an indirect. Okay. Don't do an indirect directly out of a 401k. Most common way to do rollovers are IRAs. Direct rollovers can be done anytime you want. Why you want to go 401k to IRAs? You have more distribution flexibility, right? You don't need any triggering events. Pull the money out anytime you want. You can do alternative assets, real estate, cryptos, private businesses, venture capital, private equity. You have more control over those investments, either through checkbook or just a regular IRA. So that is the common approach is if you have a triggering event, you leave your job, you turn 59 and a half, you roll it into an IRA and then have more investment options and more distribution flexibility. But remember, if you want to do an in-kind, roll it to the IRA first and then do the in-kind out of the IRA because there's no 20% withholding. Otherwise, that's not much else to kind of concern yourself with. It's mostly do the direct to the IRA and then you have the indirect option. If you're stuck in a 401k, you don't have rollover ability because you don't satisfy a planned triggering event, ask about the loan feature, or maybe you can satisfy a hardship. But again, the hardship still have to pay tax, just not the 10% penalty. Otherwise, you don't really have a lot of options, unfortunately. So those are really the common mistakes or common issues to consider when doing a rollover. Obviously, you need to trigger an event and then try to go direct and then do an indirect through the IRA. Don't do the indirect through the 401k because of the 20% withholding. Otherwise, thank you for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Don't make any rollover mistakes. Don't want to lose 20% of your 401k funds. It's unnecessary. So hopefully this podcast has educated you so you will not make that mistake. Because again, these rules are really not discussed. HR doesn't talk to you about them. I know I've had friends and colleagues get hit with this 20% withholding and no one ever told them about it. And they were not happy. So here I am telling you about it. So you will not hopefully be in that position. You can just do a rollover to an IRA and then do an indirect from the IRA without the 20% withholding tax. So thanks again for listening, for watching. Really appreciate it. And again, this Podcast drops every Tuesday, so check it out. And if you miss it, don't worry. You can pick it up anywhere you listen to podcasts, or just check out our YouTube channel, IRA Financial. Subscribe. You'll get notifications when videos and podcasts drop, which is generally every day. So it's a really good place to get content if you're interested in self-directed retirement topics. It's free. Might as well check it out. Some good stuff there. Really good content. That's what I love doing. I'll pump content out, and believe it or not, it's free. I'm not charging anything. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. And that's it. Have a great rest of your day. And hopefully I'll see everyone again next week. Take care.